Standing Committee on Strategies and Public Policies. And tonight we will mostly talk on budgetary matters. Essentially, there are 4 different presentations that will taken either on location or virtually. We shall begin. I will name the 4. The first one is Kodiak Regional Policy Authority, followed by Transaqua, the Water Agency, and followed by Kodiak Transpo, and to finish it off, Expansion Dieppe. So, without any further delay, we have the representative from the Kodiak Regional Policy Authority and the RCMP. Good evening, one and all. Good evening. Good evening.
Est-ce qu'il y a des tableaux à être présentés ou...
You have any charts? Yes. Slides? Is it visible? I can't understand what you're saying. We now have the presentation. Good evening, Your Worship and members of council. We have 4 in the room. Jacques Savoie, myself. I sit on the Finance Committee and Mrs. Hathaway. So she will start with the presentation. And if there's questions, we will answer these questions.
Good evening, everyone. Sorry for my presentation is in English. Apologize for that. Moving on to slide 2 of the presentation. Our total requirement for regular members in a given year is 147 regular members and 79 municipal employees for a total complement of 226 members. In any given time, on average, roughly 16 members are on sick leave and 4.5 members on training, 4 members are either on vacation or other. They're not available to perform day-to-day duties, and 6 members are on specialized units. And on aggregate, we don't have roughly 30.5 members available for active duty in a given year. So moving on to the slide 2, what that does is it increases the percentage of frontline shifts that do not meet the minimum staff threshold, increases over time as a result of calling some of the members back, an increase in crime index for the Greater Moncton area above the provincial and national rates. So moving on to slide 4 of the presentation, what it does, we are trying to accommodate 147 members. 16 are all at any given point in time are not available because of the sick leave. We have around 131 members that are available for active duty. That's what we actually pay for the regional Kodiak superintendent pays for it. And what it does is it increases our overtime, limits the proactive policing, and hence it's creating surpluses in our budgets over the last 3 years. Going on to the next slide. So we want to increase the complement to 160. That means we are increasing the overall complement from 147 to 100 by 13 members to 160. So as a result, as usual, 16 members are not available because of the sick time. We are looking at 144 members that are available for active duty. We want it to be 147. However, 144 is the best we can do in 2021. So going forward, this would lower our overtime, increase our proactive policing, and no more surpluses going forward. As a result, the last page is the total financial numbers. Because of the increase in regional regular members of 13, we're asking for a $1,999,774 increase to the budget. At the same time, there are reductions due to operations and maintenance of $277,000. Plus, traditionally, we haven't paid for those members that are on sick leave, which is $1,328,984. It's a reduction, offset by certain other costs for divisional admin of $426,300 and other forensic identification costs $473 for a net reduction of $648,604. And on the municipal side of the portion of the budget, we are including an additional revenue of $750,000 from fire service for dispatching, which uses a credit of $493,120. Dieppe portion of that credit is $138,014. As a result of all the changes that we are proposing, we're increasing the budget by $580,787, which is 1.7% increase year over year. If you look at the total dollars of the budget for 2021, without the surplus coming in, usually if any surpluses that are 2 years old, we bring it into the current year. Without the surplus, its total budget is $34,632,344. And Dieppe portion without the surplus is 18.41%, which is $6,373,009. And again, Dieppe portion with surplus will be $6,092,369,000. That is it for my presentation, Your Worship.
Merci, Nagash. Tu veux faire une... Donc, j'aimerais juste souligner que
I would like to mention the budget would not change as we have budgeted for 147 members. And as Naglesh said, the process that we will follow would be to have 160, and we pay only for members who are paying. Those who are on sick leave, who cannot work, we would not pay. It's only the overtime amount. We don't pay for the salary. Therefore, with this in mind, we would like to give more and have our annual priority. If you have any question, we would be happy to answer them. Any question from the members of council? Yes. Madame Duboutier. Thank you, Your Worship. I have some questions I have a hard time to follow. The last things you dealt with, you said there's a lack. If the employees are at 147, we won't pay the employees that are sick. And for vacation or whatever, why wouldn't we pay them in 2021 and we're paying it now? Why wouldn't we pay it in 2021 and not now? I don't understand the question. No, repeat it in French, but sorry, it's the logic. Wow, you mentioned in 2021, because we will increase the number of employees, we'll go and get additional employees. We will not pay the cost of people who are sick. or who are on vacation, there won't be an additional cost to the budget. I don't understand the logic. Why are we paying it now in 2020 when people are sick, and why would we not pay the sick people in 2021? In 2020, for the fiscal calendar for us, it starts on April the 1st. So this budget is for 2021. The authority pays only for the members who are sick for 30 days, and the people who are on maternity leave, and let's say that the members are on vacation, for instance, for the members who are on vacation. So this budget is for 2021. So there's really, it's as if I understood that we would benefit from the budget by having an increase in employees. That's how I understood it. It's with the budget, it's 147 members. These are members in uniform, but because of injuries, either physically or mentally, maternity leave or whatever you want, the lack of members, it's obvious. The members who are not at work receive their salary. What we would like to do is have more members that are available to work, and it will remain in the same percentage of the budget, 147. Can you explain more? Not on the presentation that you made, but the one that you presented, there was a $750,000 additional revenues. Is that new this year? Was it there in previous year? Was it somewhere else in the budget in previous years? The 750,000 was not in the budget last year. It was always included, but it was not identified per se. There was not a line that would say services for that amount. We wanted to make it more obvious. The 750,000, the portion for the 750, 138,000, that would be a cost for your county service. That's a revenue for your department to fulfill. It's something that it's always been there. It was a service that we were offering to the fire department, but this year we decided to close it down, and the cost that we charge will not cover everything that we receive for the dispatch service. So if I understand correctly, the 138,014 for the city of Dieppe will be 138,000 for the city. Yes, exactly. Yes, exactly. 138,000 more for the city of Dieppe in the budget, in the fire department budget. Thank you. That's over and above the increase in staff. Yes, Dispatch-wise, we added one person, as you can see, that was a yellow column. One person in the staff. It's mostly because of overtime we had to spend in the last few years, but it's additional. $138,000 is additional, is added on.
Il me semble que c'est une drôle de formule
It's a strange formula
de travail de tout transférer.
with work. You transfer the cost that's been there since the beginning. We can't say that it's a breach of contract, but could it not be seen if it's a service that we lose,
Dans le sens que
in that
c'était là avant, puis maintenant c'est
it was there before and it's not there anymore? The service is still there,
Oui, mais maintenant,
yes, but now
c'est un service que la GRC
it's a service that the RCMP was offering, and now it's a service that if we say, no, we're not paying for it,
ce qui est la réponse à ça. Là.
what's the answer to that?
Je veux pas payer.
I don't want to pay.
Que nous, on devrait
So I don't see why now we should pay
nous a toujours
a cost that's always belonged to us. The cost is the same. It's the department that pays the cost. It won't be the RCMP. It would be the fire department. But it's simply for transparency purpose. This year, we started charging a small fire department in Southeast with a formula that we dispatch. The CRPA wanted us to do the same thing with the 3 fire department in Moncton, Review, and Dieppe. It doesn't cost more at the end for the city of Dieppe. It's simply that instead of the CRPA paying the whole amount, it will be divided according to the formula. Moncton, Review, Dieppe. It's the same cost for Dieppe, Review, and Moncton, but it's not the same department that will pay for it. If I can make a comparison here,
Je peux faire une analogie puis dire, par exemple,
and I could say that we only want to pay
la GRC est sur notre territoire.
when the RCMP will be on our territory. What will it look like? I don't follow. Can you repeat?
Dieppe, un certain
If
pourcentage,
you charge us a certain percentage of money for the time that you spend
si j'ai bien compris,
on accidents, if I understood,
38 000.
the 138,000, essentially, it represents the time that our part of the cost you've calculated when your personnel come on our territory for accident scene. If we said the same thing, we'll pay you only for the hours when the RCMP spend on our territory.
C'est une drôle
It seems that it's a funny way
de travailler ensemble
of working together
à améliorer
and
les services.
arriving to improve the services to our citizens.
Est-ce que comment que nous
I have a hard time to see how we will explain this to our citizens.
transfert de
There seems to be a transfer of costs that is happening at your end, but nothing changed for us. We don't have any benefit that comes to us from it. It's like the Boston Tea Party. The formula for the 138,000, it's with the cost, the assessment for the formula, but the 138,000 would have been paid by the RCMP for the dispatching services that's always been had and will be this year, except that according to the formula that we want to use, these costs would be paid by the fire department. If not, our increase would be higher. It would probably be 3.7%. It would be the same amount that the city of Dieppe would pay, or Riverview, or Moncton.
moi, c'est plus transparent comme ça.
It's more transparent like that.
Ça aurait été plus transparent
It would have been more transparent
de ne pas toucher
not to touch,
parce que là, on
not
sait
to
que ça
touch it, because at least we know where it's going. But it seems that right now,
si on regarderait ça de la façon
if we
sur le
look
montant
at it based on the number of hours that the RCMP spent on our territory, and we said we'll only pay for that invoice,
qu'on est dans un
we are in a system that is slightly different with three communities as such, and maybe you are offering us an opportunity to make some major changes. I can assure you, it's not to criticize Mr. Superintendent, but you know the number of complaints we're receiving right now, including all kinds of things that it's all traffic issues, if I can call it that, under the Motor Vehicle Act, and we don't see the feedback that we're getting from the citizens that not much is being done. We ask the citizens of Dieppe to accept an additional cost, 138,000, essentially with no changes. The cost would not be additional. It's always been there. It's just for transparency. We want to show it, send it to the fire department. Okay. Other questions from the councillors? Madame Boutier. Want to come back on the same thing. We say there's no additional cost, but we have to realize we don't have 1.71%. We have 887 plus $500,000 that we put in income that is really there. So you're submitting a budget. We talk about transparency. Well, it's 3%. If we want to compare to last year, $500,000 that you're putting in income that you will charge us in another way. True. You're right. That's what it is. As I said, the increase would be closer to 3.7%. So it's about 2%. The income that will come from the fire departments from the three communities, you're absolutely right. It would be more or less an increase of 3.7%. We want to make sure that we're talking about the same thing with the same intentions. Councillor Leblanc. Thank you, Worship. Not to be the devil's advocate, but you say on average you have an amount of members that is always on sick leave or maternity or paternity leave or whatever. What would happen if everybody, all these members were at work on an exceptional year? Well, it's an excellent question. Every year, we want to increase by 13. There's a process that we have with the federal government. The same process can be made for 10 on long term or middle term if something was to affect member in. We could use that mechanism for next year. We could reduce the 13 again. Through the years 2021, we have other mechanisms that can be more on a short-term basis, different ways of reducing quite quickly, and we could use these two methods either on short-term or long-term if ever the historical trend did not maintain, but over the last 10 years, it's been more 16 and other years closer to 20. We suspect that 13 would be a good figure with this strategy. We suspect that it will work properly, but if ever there was a change, we have technical techniques that we can use over the years, or on a long-term basis, we can reduce the amount. The ideal point of having 147 members at work, is that the ideal? The number 147 has been identified with the ICMP, but the problem is that we never have 147. We think that strategy will bring us closer to 147. But on the paper, it will increase to 160 or 144 or 147 be the average. It's always been that when the members were on sick leave, we were not billed. It's always been like that. Yes, for those who are sick for more than 30 days, we don't pay for them. But if you put them all together, those we did not pay, usually it's between 16 and 20 members on average. Under 30 days, they are covered. Just the same. Yes, yes. Thank you. Monsieur Melanson. Good evening. I have an explanation for those who are on sick leave for more than 30 days. Well, this represents a budgetary increase in the salary. Yes, that's what causes the surplus each year. Can we anticipate the importance of surplus? Well, if the 13 increased at the end of the year, around 147, as it was mentioned, the surplus should reduce considerably. It means that supplement should be close to 144, 147. The services for the three communities we increase in the budget should be about what we budgeted for. So the surplus should reduce, should come down. So the economy of people on sick leave, everything should balance out. Yes. Thank you. Other questions from the councillors? No? So, thank you for your presentation. Of course, the other discussions will be had. I think traditionally it's been the rubber stamping. That's what comes to mind, but I think maybe for our budget for the city of Dieppe, we'll have to look at where we can go and get what is essentially an increase of half a cent taxes that you're asking us over and above. We'll see where it takes us, and there'll be more communication between the different members of the staff. Thank you. Good evening. Next group that just came in, Mr. Desjardins. You realize we're on. We're in broadcast. I thought maybe you forgot about it. And his Monsieur Kevin Rice from Transaqua. Welcome to our humble city hall. Just a minute. I don't recognize you. Thank you very much for the invitation. I'm Michel Desjardins. I'm the new president of Transaqua. And I have with me Kevin Rice. And I think we also have Jean-Pierre Ouellet and Guy Gagnon, who are your representative with at Transaqua for the city of Dieppe. We have a small presentation to present the budget for 2020-2021 for Transaqua. I will start, and Kevin will continue in English. We want to start by reminding you our vision at Transaqua to be ensuring the quality of life for the citizens of Dieppe Mountain Review. Our mission at Transaqua is to collect and deal the waterways in a good way and a respectful manner, respecting the environment. Microphone. We have priority for 2021. We'll talk to you about it. We wanted to remind you that the rate for Transaqua have remained consistent for the last 4 years, since 2017, since the beginning of construction, or the level of the plant we maintain. Our rate $210 per unit. We'll propose a slight increase, and we'll talk to you about it. What we are doing in part is to introduce a system that will allow us to better understand the maintenance of our asset during the next few years. We're introducing a system that will work in that sense, and our objective at the end of 2021, we intend to have a deficit infrastructure deficit markup and reserve for the capital. What it means essentially is that we have planned to develop a strategic plan essentially for all future costs focus on Transaqua, and we will ask the participation of our parties, and namely the city of Dieppe, to help us out.
Good evening. So we are in the process. We've just received our preliminary feasibility study for a heat recovery system. We would be one of the only ones that I believe we're aware of in Atlantic Canada that are actually using a heat recovery system to recover heat for our HVAC systems, cooling and heating. And we're expecting that that would power the equivalent of 100 homes per year. So that is something that we're working on. Next year, we'd like to do a feasibility study on solar power. So we're actively engaged in trying to find ways we can reduce energy. Our goal is to complete the regional wastewater and combined sewer overflow strategy. Last year, that was put on hold in our budget process, but this year, the commission is going ahead with that. It's about $350,000 study is estimated to be. So we currently have the RFQ documents out, and we are hoping to proceed with that next year. Again, complete the feasibility study for use of solar power. We would like to host an open house at our compost facility next year in July, and the wastewater treatment plant come August next year. We'd like to welcome the public and do tours and see all the great benefits of the upgrade project. With the capital budget next year, we're planning to complete phase 4B, which is our biosolids loadout building. We're expecting to have most of that constructed by the end of this year, but completed next year. Our biofilter, and also our UV disinfection, and then the completion of the site works with our asphalt, curb, and landscaping. The Bourke Road force main construction along Melanson and Bourke Roads. So we've already met with City of Dieppe staff to develop the tender documents for the projects for the next 2 years along Bourke Road and Melanson. So we are working side by side and plan to continue working together as that road is reconstructed by the city in the next 2 years as well. And then our final component will be a smaller piece just off of, I believe, Bourke Road in 2023. The Beaubassin wastewater pumping station, we're looking to complete the detailed design to upgrade that pumping station in 2021. Heat recovery system I mentioned. We also need to replace the main pumping station generator tie switch. So if that is a 30-year-old piece of equipment that has met the end of its life cycle. So if we don't replace that switch and we lose power, we risk losing our main pumps. So we have to definitely change that tie switch. And we're looking to purchase a compost tractor. Right now we use a contractor's tractor. So we did a business case analysis on that and our payback is less than 5 years. So we're looking at changing how we do our compost operations by becoming a little bit more self-sufficient. So that's one of the things that we're looking at next year. So with our implementation of the long-term capital expenditures for the next 15 years, as you see at the very beginning on the left, that's still high expenditures to finish up the upgrade project of the treatment facility. We're looking at the conveyance system in the mid-2020s for the Second River Crossing and the upgrades to Virginia Pumping Station. And further back into 2030, we're starting to look at our combined sewer overflow stations, starting to implement that strategy. So the key budget issues for 2021, well, with $90 million worth of infrastructure, our operating costs are increasing significantly. So we look at property tax, we look at insurance, we look at depreciation, we look at labor, park supply, electricity amounts to $4 million almost. So that's right now with our $210 per unit rate, our average operating surplus has been about $5 million per year, and that's mainly been used to fund the upgrade project. So as you see, out of that $5 million, $3 million of it will be estimated for increased operating costs next year. So our operating surplus will drop from $5 million to about $2 million. We're expecting a reduction of revenue for our septage. There's a private contractor who has been approved to build a facility in Moncton, so one of the industrial parks. So we're expecting that they may either price lower or they may have other contractors going to that facility. So one of the things that we look at is, that doesn't bother me a whole lot. Right now, the amount of septage that we get that's coming into our facility, the maintenance costs are very high. That type of material has always caused problems in our treatment process. So our fine screens, we had to get our fine screens already had to be repaired that were just commissioned a couple of years ago. People from Veolia who come out of Montreal have been all over North America, and they've said that the material they've seen on our fine screens is the worst they've ever seen. So we need to continue with the public education of helping people understand what not to put down the toilet, because it is coming to our facility at the end, and it is causing process issues. So we will continue to educate the public on what not to put down the sewers. We're also going to see a reduction of our interest income, which is quite significant because we expect, we've been billing Infrastructure Canada 33% as per our agreement, up to their maximum of $22 million contribution. We expect that $22 million will be fulfilled by the end of this year. So Transaco will be paying 75% of the bill, RDC 25% for the remainder of the project until July next year. So we have $15 million in our reserve account, that investment that's maturing in November. We'll be keeping that as cash to fund the remainder of the project. As I mentioned, the operating surplus, it'll decrease significantly due to our new operational costs. What we want to do in 2021 is we want to identify and build a spare parts inventory for critical equipment. So if, for example, if we have 4 main pumps, we have 3 centrifuges, we'll have a new aeration system for our bioreactor. Basically, if any of those pieces of equipment break, we're out of business. So we want to identify critical inventory to make sure we have inventory in stock to repair those machines as quickly as possible. As mentioned before, we have funds allocated for the completion of that strategy. We want to continue enhancing our messaging. So radio, digital, Moncton Wildcats advertising that we just engaged in this year. Social media messaging, we want to participate in that and try to participate in some new public forums, such as, for example, the Moncton Home Show. So with revenue and expenditures, this just kind of shows our user fees. So we have 60,000 units at $210 per unit. The math's pretty simple there. If we look at all of our expenditures that are increasing, and it kind of shows the bottom line. Our expenditures here, they've increased again significantly. In here, you're seeing some of you can see basically with our operating expenditures how they've increased by almost 20%, I believe, on average. And the operating surplus shows 2020 budget, 4.7 million, dropping to 2.2 million, a reduction of 53%. And our capital expenditures for next year. So as you can see, we've still got $14.5 million to spend mainly for the upgrade project. We have 1.6 million for our conveyance system and 1.4 million for our operations. So our total budget capital is 17.5 million. And we'd be more than happy to, basically what we've, at the last commission meeting with respect to the rates in 2021, I've been given direction to increase our rates by 2%, which is $4.20 per unit. So we'll be more than happy to answer any questions you may have. And Michelle is here to answer any questions with respect to the rate.
Merci, thank you. Questions from members of council? Questions des membres de
Question from the members of council, starting with Mrs. Boutier, Your Worship.
I have a few questions. So,
Vas-y.
I'll address in English, so you. Okay, so first, based on your operational capital expenditure budget, can you explain to me why we have an increase of 80,000 in Dieppe and Moncton only has an increase of 33,000? Well, it's more than user fee.
Is that for the units?
Yeah,
Uh,
in terms of revenue. So
It's the
we would
it's
be
the same
paying,
price
right?
per unit, so there may be more units in Dieppe than other jurisdictions. Pull this slide up and see. So the user fees basically are based on the number of units. The CFOs for each municipality, we meet in June of each year, and the CFOs forward us the amount of units they will have for the next budget year. So we just add $210 per unit to the information that's given to us.
I'm not sure how it really works there. But
So it's $210 per unit. So in your bylaws,
Yeah.
for example, there are some commercial entities like barber shops or restaurants, and they assign a certain amount of units to each commercial entity. It's part of how that formula works. So if a barber shop has 3 or 4 bathrooms, that may be 3 units, depending on how the bylaw works. So that's why, if you have more businesses concentrated in a certain area, you may see a higher amount of units than residential units per se. But also there's a formula in there that commercials also pay for a certain price for the amount of water that's used, which the CFOs are very well aware of. So we're given the information and we assign the $210 per unit directly to the information given to us.
So my next question is, so the $4, is it included per unit? The increase is representative in the budget right now? Or
No,
are we
it's-
supposed to add that in top of that? And what would be the number?
It's not in this budget that's being presented to you right now, because this budget is frozen at 210 for the information that's been given to council.
Mhm.
However, I've been, waiting for direction from the commission with respect to any rate increase. So once I'm given that direction, the budget will be adjusted before their final vote on November 19th. So it basically, the way it works is 60,000 units. $4.20 is in the order of about $250,000 increase. So for every $5 increase in the rate, equates to $300,000 in revenue overall.
So I will go back. So you stipulate that you will generate in 2021 a surplus of 5 million, but you'll have new expenses and you should reach a surplus of over 2 million, right? And yet you still want to do an increase of $4.
That's correct. So when we first initially presented to the commission back in September, the budget, we have enough information through our computerized maintenance management system. We've identified all of our assets. We completed our inventory. We're starting to do condition assessments on those. So right now we have a $55 million infrastructure deficit. Right now we have $3 million per year in additional operating costs. We also have the order of $80 million in capital costs that are in the next 15 years. So if we add our capital budget needs, 80 million, to our infrastructure deficit, which is 55 million, it's 130 million. The difference in the operating costs before this project and next year brings us to $2 million of an operating surplus. Over 15 years, you can equate that to be $30 million. There's a $100 million gap between the capital budget needs and resolving the infrastructure deficit. So as you can see, we say the rate, in order for the commission to be financially sustainable as a user pay model, the rates would have to go up by $85 per unit next year to be able to meet those needs. So the regional wastewater and CSO strategy will help us identify Moncton, for example, the Wheeler Boulevard combined sewer overflow. They have a major project on their books that would remove a lot of storm flow coming to our plant. We don't know how much that is expected to remove, but if they remove a lot of stormwater coming to our facility, do we really need a second river crossing valued at $8 to $10 million? Those are the kind of questions that are going to be answered through this strategic plan next year. So by this time next year, we will have the answers to those questions from the strategy, and we'll also have our CMMS program with all our financial information uploaded into the system. That's going to tell us you have this amount of assets in very poor condition that are at the end of their life cycle that need to be replaced right now. A lot of the assets that are in our plant right now are 25 to 30 years old. Most assets have a life cycle of 25 years, except for pipes. So a lot of the infrastructure that we have right now is at the end of its life cycle. By the time we come out of this project, we may have $5 to $10 million in our capital reserve account. Not nearly enough. So next year, we'll have a very detailed report outlining our capital replacement cost needs every year for the next 60 years. We can project that far once we have everything into our system. So that's why we definitely need to have an increase next year. I think the commission's very cognizant. I can speak for the chair, he can speak for himself, but we're cognizant of the economic impacts of COVID. It's hurt a lot of people. So we don't want to increase the rates, so we're shocking the communities, as what happened in St. John. In St. John in 2009, I was there for the harbor cleanup project. And once it finished, their rates went up 20% overnight. And they've averaged between 6 and 7% increases every year since then. So it's not abnormal that the commission would need to rebuild its capital reserve fund. The other thing is that that's important to understand is that when we were trying to get financing and funding for the project, we contemplated going to the Municipal Capital Borrowing Board, issued a letter to all the councils as were required by law 45 days before the vote. There was a huge uproar at the time that why should Transaqua be going to the Capital Borrowing Board to fund the project? Well, the province wasn't on board. So when the province did come on board after a number of meetings, it was a take it or leave it offer of 25%. Instead of the true 33, 33, 33 tripartite funding models that all other wastewater treatment plants in New Brunswick have gotten, we got 25, 25, 50. That drained $17 million out of our reserve account just with that deal alone. So it's the cards we were dealt. The project's going to get done, but we have some challenges ahead of us. So that's kind of the position that we're in right now.
Merci. Monsieur Cormier.
Merci, Monsieur le Maire.
Cormier, thank you, Your Worship.
Dollar that was added to the sewer bill quite a few years back, that generated how much revenue in reserve?
Depending on well, I mean, the rates have been increasing steadily since 2004, I believe. One year, $5, another year, $10, another year, $10, to get to where we're at now. Those funds were projected to pay for the wastewater treatment facility upgrade project. However, what was never contemplated, because it wasn't really well known back then, was how to deal with the infrastructure deficit. So those rate increases that started years ago were specifically for the upgrade project, not to take care of any infrastructure deficit that we had because nobody thought about it at the time.
I don't want to be the devil's advocate, but isn't it a bit premature to bring an increase before we know how much water, surface water won't be drained in the sewer if the other municipalities do the work they should be doing? Decreasing the amount of flow into the.
Right now, we've built this treatment plant for the next 40 years for the capacity of a growing community. These communities are growing rapidly. We're now the biggest community in New-Brunswick. So we built this plant for the next 40 years for projected capacity. There's a lot of fixed costs. There's a lot of infrastructure there that we put in place that we need. It's got to be there to meet the future needs. So there aren't very many variable costs outlined in our budget, like energy efficiency. That's something we're looking to reduce our electricity costs. This heat recovery project, it's probably $500,000 in capital, but it's going to reduce our electricity costs by $36,000 a year. Payback's 15 years. We're looking at opportunities through the strategy to either eliminate existing projects on the capital plan, or we're looking for better ways to do things, better ways to deliver our service at a cheaper cost. So that is mainly what we're focused on right now, understanding the financial situation we're in.
Thanks.
Merci, Monsieur Cormier. Monsieur Godette.
Merci, Monsieur le Maire.
Thank you, Your Worship.
The only point I want to make is that this is not really the time to start asking for increases, given the economy as it now sits. Our businesses are suffering. There are a lot of people that are just have reduced hours of work, and they're just getting by. So I'm just wondering, what is the impact to your organization by pulling back on this for a year and let the dust settle with respect to what's happening in the economy? Because we may be building more buildings, we may be looking at larger number of apartments, et cetera, but there's still a lot of suffering out there. And I think it's important to have a look at that in the context of what's going on today and what could go on in the next 6 to 8 months if this problem is not resolved. Thank you.
Monsieur Godet, vous avez tout à fait raison de poser des bonnes questions.
Yeah, you're absolutely right, Mr. Cadet. Those questions are good. But listen, to guide our decision, we base ourselves on certain principles. One of the principles is in the future, we want to avoid at all costs rate shocks. My colleague said, we don't want to arrive in 1 to 4 years where we will have to increase in a drastic way. We are aware of that dynamic, of that possibility. The other thing I want to mention that is important is at Transaqua, I don't know if you know, but we have a culture to pay as we go along our capital project. We don't borrow money. We've never done it. It's part of the culture of the organization. It doesn't mean we will never do it. But for the time being, that's how Transaqua has always operated. So we want to keep that in mind. Transaqua, the Commission has considered an increase more higher than 2% for this year, but in light of the economic condition, in light of the reality that COVID has put on us. The Commission feels 2% is a reasonable increase, especially considering that in the last 4 years, there was zero increase. So we feel that it's a reasonable increase that help us hardly to meet the inflation. As my colleague said also, I think that in a year from today, we'll be in a better position to understand exactly what will be our need in the future. But we know there will be needs. What we propose is to make one small step this year ahead and next year come here with more detailed information that will allow you to understand for the 60 next years how everything will operate. That's the reasoning behind it. The only comment I would make as to the stability that we've had for 4 years is that that stability was over and above operation to create a reserve. The citizen of Dieppe Monetary Review paid more to build that reserve. Now we're in a situation where we want to go further and increase the cost. So at this time, I find that it's not the time. There's already enough money in the reserve that would keep us safe for the next 12 months, and let's keep it for next year. Thank you, Your Worship. Thank you, Mr. Cadet. I think we've had all the exchange we will be having until now, up to now. I think the Municipal Council, Councilor Cadet and Mr. Boutier have explained it properly. And Mr. Cormier, sorry, Mr. Cormier, I did not want to forget you, but they express very well what are the expectations of the councils not to have any increase this year, considering progressive increases during the last few years in order to meet the major project that was put forward, knowing very well that there are changes forthcoming in Moncton about their system. I don't want to say it that way, but finally, we should wait till next year to see the impact of the work that will be done. Hoping that they will be done, the work that is, and from that, maybe we can propose some long-term project on a plan.
Something that we started back in actively more than 10 years ago. And it has allowed us to reduce our debt load in terms of percentage. And we continue in that direction. So don't think that we don't get it. We get it. And we understand the importance of it. Par contre, on a aussi une responsabilité envers nos citoyens qui devraient avoir le
However, we have responsibility towards our citizens that should have a break, especially in the situation, as mentioned by Mr. Cadet, the situation that exists presently. As for the capital project from our neighbors, which we hope that we won't need another crossing on Virginia side. Let's leave it there, stop there, and continue to use your pencil to sharpen. We'll bring your comment at the next meeting of the commission. And before we close, recognizing that our two representatives are on the Zoom. I want to thank Yves Gagnon and Monsieur Jean-Pierre Ouellet for their contribution to our community. And it will be a pleasure to talk with you two sooner or later, for the end of the fiscal year, we'll try to reach you and communicate with you in the days to come, in the few days. Thank you. See you.
OK, ça nous amène maintenant à la
That brings us
présentation,
to the presentation by, we're at Quediac Transpo.
let me trouver cette filière-là, Kodiak Transpo.
Let me find that file, Quediac Transpo.
Et qui,
And who?
Monsieur Hauser,
Mr.
Yes,
Hauser?
good evening. Good evening.
to you. On accueille aussi Monsieur Richard.
We
qui
also have Mr. Richard, who is still involved in transportation field.
Greg, if I may call you Greg.
Absolutely, no problem. Yeah,
Please go ahead and start us.
perfect. Good. Let me share a presentation.
Pardon the pun, but let's get things rolling.
There we go. Perfect. Good. I'm gonna share a presentation for a minute, and Angela unfortunately is get tied up with the Moncton Council tonight too. So I'll go through a presentation she was going to give, and walk through some current state of situation and a little bit about the budget for 2021. So basically, so right now, the current state we're in right now is basically we're at 50% capacity, and service hours are at 55%. So basically, that means no midday service, night or Sunday service, and that's the same in all three communities in Dieppe, Riverview, and Moncton. Up until June, we actually only had 20% seating capacity. Since then, seating capacity has been at 50% or 18 passengers per bus. Prior to COVID, just as a note, we're on track to have a very good year with respect to ridership. At that point, we're around $300,000 ahead of budget. At that point, that was into March. And then unfortunately, COVID hit, and things basically have evolved. It's been a challenge since then, as you can all aware, not only with buses, but with the rest of our businesses and for all citizens involved. Just a little note on some of the things that Kodiak's doing with respect to COVID-19 health and safety measures. There is daily fleet sanitization, screening employees daily with temperature gauges, many measures for passengers, joint safety operational plan, working with St. John and Fredericton, and trading best practices. The challenge is it's a fluid situation and continues to adapt. We've provided, we'll continue to have provided many updates to the governance committee over the last number of months. Some updates that have occurred in the last couple months. There were no fares collected from the point from March 16th until around August. Part of that had to do with not wanting to pass cash, also protection of the drivers, where at that point then drivers were, there's plexiglass shields, and it also involved obviously the number of passengers on the bus. There has been conducted a passenger travel needs survey that has provided good information to address the needs. Right now, passenger ridership is around 35%. Demand's expected to increase. It'll take time. And so far, we've only had since August 24th, really 6 to 7 weeks of passenger data to understand where things are heading. Obviously, a lot of initial traffic, the core runs where they're heading into the downtown areas, even to Champlain Mall, to the TD call center there. And obviously, like I said, in the downtown Moncton, a lot of those offices, people are still working from home. So that's limiting the ridership there. Some cost mitigation measurements, obviously casual hours, we're paying basically just 30 hours for casual drivers per week. At a point in time, it was 40, and now it's 30. And also fuel consumption is down, with only running at around 55% Fuel consumption is down, and we've been fortunate because we have had really good fuel pricing since early in the year. So that has helped significantly as we've gone along. And I'll share a little bit of that when we get into some of the numbers and projections that we're talking about into the rest of the year and into next year. So basically, the back to school, there has been some increase in ridership, a slight bit we've noticed just on, some of the data, early data, plus also some of the information coming from drivers and surveys from riders. Essential workers are the ones who continue to support transit. Basically, and the important part there is that they are able to get on the bus, get where they need to go with the service that's in place. Overall, though, generally passenger demand is down, as we can all understand. As I said earlier, it's around 35%. So, there is concerns, there is issues of trying to have a few more runs on the key lines, on the key runs to provide those who are either essential workers or others trying to head to their business or place of business, place of work, in order to provide that in a reliable manner. So what we've done with the city of Moncton and looking at different options and working with your staff, looking at 3 or 4 different options, and I'll present those in a second. But ideally, sort of the one that appears to be recommended and looked at for the city of Dieppe is option 4, where we'll increase passenger trips on number 93 Champlain, which includes midday service, which right now that's not occurring. And also will allow night service until 9:30, which hasn't been, service has been closing off before then. So we can certainly look at increasing some of those passenger trips and with midday service, as I said, night service until 9:30. So I'm going to share a little bit of the screen with you. Hopefully that's legible. If not, I can pull up an Excel spreadsheet and just a little bit of the numbers that I can basically share with everybody. You basically have your 2020 budget. This is what was proposed last year and everybody's working against. So the total budget was just $1,066,000, which included expenditures of $1.2 million, replacing buses, which is basically providing buses when yours are down, bus maintenance, which is basically the cost of operating and managing the buses in the sense of the maintenance costs, and then estimated revenue of $310,000. And there was bus shelter maintenance that you guys covered directly yourselves. Now, as I said earlier, you've got a projection that we've done. This was as of August. It's pretty much held from what I've seen in our September numbers, where expenditures were $908,000. This is your share. And replacing buses, you've used very few. You've had your own buses, but you have had additional buses. And because of the volume of 55% usage, there's ability to repair the buses very easy, not needing extra buses. The bus maintenance has been pretty much at par. The buses still require maintenance. There's still some engine jobs and different things that happen early in the year. One of the things that has impacted positively, I mentioned, you'll see the $908,000 versus $1.2 million. 2 things. One, fuel. Significant savings in fuel. Overall, across the whole network is around $800,000 to $900,000 in fuel. Your share is somewhere around, $200,000 of that, in that range. So that's helped a great deal to help mitigate, obviously, the revenue loss. So on the revenue side, which is where we've been hit the most, the revenue is basically estimated only to be $120,000, down from $310,000. So that's basically so at the end of the day, because of the savings, you will actually come in under budget anticipated, despite the fact of the lack of revenue. The costs have actually helped contribute to the savings. When we get to proposing, if we used a base budget, basically that would be at basically 100% of the normal budget. Basically, the proposed budget would have been somewhere around $1,053,000. You'll see the bottom line there. That was based on some small increase of costs, which would have been labor, offset a little bit. Fuel pricing is a little better than it has been in the past. A direct bill maintenance would have been the same. Your revenue, anticipated revenue, would have been 2 or 3% higher, and which would have provided a net budget of 1053. Obviously, that with the struggles of COVID has that puts that in jeopardy. So we've provided, basically 4 options. When we've done these options, working with your staff and saying the first option is basically pretty much where we are now, where we're saying 55%, or 5,754 hours, with an estimated revenue of $140,000, and with costs where they are to be at $684,000. That's with limited runs. The runs, like I said, no midday, not late runs. The second option would have been at 10,202, which would have produced a cost of 965,000 hours. And once again, an estimated revenue of $140,000 for yours, much reduced from what we anticipated. The next one would have basically been pretty much looking almost at the base budget, so that 100% of the hours you normally have, which is somewhere around 14,000 hours. But the issue there is you'll see down on the revenue line, anticipated even with providing all those hours, you only would have had, the demand isn't there from riders, so you would have had $161,000 in revenue, which then causes a bottom line on that option number 3 of $1.2 million. So despite having all those hours, not a cost-effective method of providing service to the citizens. The fourth one, which is basically the one that your staff were recommending, is 9,802 hours, which basically provides some key service to the area, which a little bit higher in fuel costs than the current effort and staffing. Maintenance would be the same pretty much. And basically then the revenue we're anticipating, because somewhat conservatively, that the revenue would be $140,000, and so basically you're somewhere around, bottom line, around $941,000, which is around $120,000, a little less than what you have in the budget this year, roughly around the same as we project the dollars to be at for the end of 2020. So that's sort of the proposal, pretty close to what Moncton's looking at doing as well. And so if there's any questions I can answer for any of the councillors or others, I'd be pleased to do so. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hauser. It's a lot of numbers, but I would have to, just an initial comment, that appears that and I understand the COVID situation, but with some of the objectives that we have as a community to continue to develop a bus system that where people will want to use it based on its frequency and availability, looking at cutting hours while recognizing that not far off our 2020 budget, but to start wanting and suggesting that we should be cutting hours seems to be going in a different direction than the one that as a community, and I thought our partners in Moncton were also of the same view of developing a communauté durable, or I'm looking for the English word on this one, but sustainable communities, and improve our public transport. As we know, especially with the increased amount of newcomers to our region coming from other countries and regions where they're used to a better bus system. I know there's a lot of disappointment out there. It's I think going in the wrong direction, but I guess we have to deal with the cards that we're given. Perhaps. Monsieur Godette.
Oui, Monsieur le maire, est-ce qu'on pourrait avoir le commentaire à Luc qui est sur la ligne
Could we have Luke's comment, who's on the line? Maybe there are options inside our municipality that we could look at to help the situation. Luke? Mr. Richard? Good evening. I don't know if Greg has the translation. You getting the translation? Put
I
it
can
on.
click on interpretation.
Yes, in English. Hello?
Find out when you speak English or speak French.
Well, no, I'm talking now. Hello? 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 Essentially, the directive that most directors receive, the advice was to keep a zero budget in for any increase. We work with transport to have the highest service while keeping that directive. That's why we're giving you a new scenario. The council could give us an advice, an option that would be more acceptable. There are small pieces or factors that influence the budget. For instance, the cost sharing, make it the number of hours used by a percentage, the global percentage affect the amount. It's not as easy to say we pay $50 or $100 an hour. There are other factors that have to be considered in it. So with the information that we have and the use that we have of the buses, we were proposing scenario number 4 that give us service in the afternoon and at night. However, there would be no service on Sunday. Maybe we could look at a scenario, an initiative of having a service on request on Sunday. We talk about that already at the beginning of the year with a small subcommittee. So that's something, if we wanted to offer a service on Sunday, maybe we could have that as an alternative, but the options that are there now allow us to choose according to the number of services that we have. Ideally, they would be scenario number 3. So we go back to the pre-COVID service. However, if Moncton doesn't do the same thing, of course, it brings us to a 30 or 40-minute service, but there are transfer that would not be had for Champlain for people who have to transfer. These are small considerations that we have to bring in, but for the council, essentially, we have this scenario. Most are under budget, but if we want to come back to the level of service as it was pre-COVID, it's scenario 3 that we're looking at. I don't know if you have any more questions or more explanation or suggestion from the councillors. Mr. Godet? Option 3, it's an increase of about $145,000. Is that it? The budgetary increase for the year, $145,000. If I compare the figures, and Greg would be can better answer. But if we look at the figure, Greg, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, it would be another. Actually, it's almost it's 140, almost $150,000. One of the things that we've looked at, both even though I know in the city of Moncton, is we've looked at sort of, if you want to equate sort of between that option 2 and option 4. One of the reasons we've done that is to give flexibility. Right now, the ridership's not there. You don't have the volume there, but we still have the casuals on hand. We still have all the full-time drivers. So as you gear up, you can start adding some runs, adding some more frequency with a little more reliability. So we've tried to manage it. It's a tough, as I said earlier in my conversation, it's a tough situation, and every day continues to be different. Part of the struggle is the fact that we're only allowed to have 50% of the bus. If that opened up more, where you could have more people on the bus, it would obviously open up opportunities for more people to take the bus. But you get where there's people not coming downtown, people not going to Champlain Mall as much, and some of your call centers. That's, you're providing service that may not be, it may not be the ridership there. Meanwhile, you're running buses without no passengers. So that's why we've headed to that. Your option 4, between option 2 and option 4, I would say is sort of the sweet spot where we're looking at right now. And obviously, you can gear up as you see things coming back. fairly easily and still be prudent on the financial side. And that's one of the things we did see from the survey and why we'd be proposing to go from current situation up a bit, because we did see some citizens that are basically missing their connections, missing the routes because the routes aren't, or the runs aren't frequent enough. So this will help that. And even the midday service that Lucas mentioned, it will help in order to satisfy more clientele, more citizens that way.
OK. Question, Madame Leboutier.
Mr. Boudier, thank you, Worship. It's just for information, no more. As you mentioned, service-wise for the citizen, I don't see it where we want to go at a time like this. We say Kodiak transport, we have 50% and only 35% use the 50%. That's what I'm hearing, eh? We have 50%, but 35 is. My question would be, is there time during the day in Dieppe, when the bus that 50% is full, where the 50% is met in Dieppe at any given time of the day? Great.
Luke, do you have?
Oh, yes, I can try to answer it if you want. Information that I received from Angela and Kodiak Transport, the route of 93, especially from Champlain, where we have a lot of people that correspond to industrial park or students from the college. These routes are full capacity, especially 8 o'clock. We made some changes recently of the 93 and 94 to accommodate the additional passengers that wanted to use the 93. Well, it was just an explanation you mentioned, I think. I can't accept that we eliminated the Sunday. People work. All the businesses are open on Sunday. No, we have to look at a solution, and Mr. Richard mentioned it, either to go on demand and look to offer a service to our citizens on demand. And maybe that's the direction we have to take. If we want to cut in the service and increase the cut as we're doing it now. Thank you. It's just a comment. Councillor Leblanc? Thank you, Your Worship. Question for Mr. Richard. Why are we taking 4 instead of 2? 2 give us 400 hours more. And 2 service on request would look like what? Request on demand service. If I understand, it's mostly Sunday that is not part of option 4. And the reason is, like I mentioned, I think that with the limited use that we have on Sunday, instead of having a 40 messenger bus that goes through the municipality with 3 fixed routes that offer a service to every 90 minutes, there might be alternative to offer a better service while being financially cautious. So I think that's what we're looking at the present time. Fine. Well, then on demand could look like what? Is it something you look at on demand service? Would it be have a taxi? What would it be? Well, exactly. We have a small service at 2 extreme of our region, could be something like that. Let's say that Kodiak Transport would have smaller vehicle. We could offer a bus that would go, instead of having a fix, they would go where the people are asking for it. There would be a possibility of greater number of destination and amended frequency. Well, it's worth the exercise of looking at it. No one else? Well, Mr. Hauser.
Yes.
I've heard the word flexibility mentioned more than once. And does that also apply to the union in terms of making, as things improve, making more frequent changes to the schedule? Is that a possibility? Has there been a son de cloche? Has there been any kind of opening on the part of the bargaining unit over there, or they like to see their, I assume, I don't know a union that does, but I assume they don't like to see their members laid off. Form of for more flexibility on schedules and the like.
Through the whole time and, and working and, speaking with Angela, I know that there's been a very good flexibility from the union in the sense that the routes have been continued to change almost on a monthly basis. The union themselves have been really flexible, very want to work with the organization and really looking at how does it make the best for the citizens. They obviously all want to have jobs and do the best they can for the, for the bus service. So there is an openness there and a flexibility. As we've gone along, there have been, some drivers who've gone over to look at, and I mentioned about sanitation, but they've gone and worked in the service area. When they weren't busy because we cut back hours, they worked in the service area. We need more sanitization, things like that. There is obviously continuous discussions on the go as to how do we manage the hours, how do we go forward with service. That's something that we continue to talk to the union about. But they have been, kudos to them. They have been very open and basically pretty flexible with what they've done with the members and how they can help to support the service the best way they could.
Good news. OK. D'autres questions de la part des membres du Conseil?
Any other questions from the councillors? Okay, fine.
As the old saying goes, we'll get back to you.
Perfect. Well, thank you. Appreciate it. Thank you for the opportunity. It's always a pleasure coming to Dieppe Council. Thank you.
Au revoir.
Au revoir.
Au revoir. Next, we have a good friend from Expenditure Dieppe, and I see Mr. Godbout, who is coming forward with his preferred member of the board, and
Sauver de la caméra.
Perfect. Bonsoir.
Bonsoir,
good
M.
evening. Good evening, Mr. Godbout. How are you? Dangerously well, as always. Thank you. Your worship, members of council, I have with me tonight, as you said, my favorite accountant, the Secretary Treasurer, Mr. Henry Seaver. Monsieur Paré apologizes. He would have liked to be here, but he's unable to be with us. So I would like to mention the other members of our board of directors who are around the table. Councillor Leboutillier, Councillor Godette, Mr. Melançon and Thériault. From the members of the board of directors. I don't know if there's anyone else following us in the virtual world. I want to thank you. I'm wondering when the position on the board of director was subtracted. I started with his worship. Good evening. But it's looking like good evening. So before I start presenting our request, we would like to show you some key measures in our strategic plan and the work that was done for the growth of our beautiful city of Dieppe. The key to succeed in our mandate, as you confided us, is a cooperation that we have with you and every level of the city. So I want to thank everybody around the table for that excellent cooperation that is very strategic between Expansion Dieppe and every level of the city to attain our mandate. As you will see tonight, we will show you some figures for 2020, but things are going well. It's going very well for us, even in the pandemic, but this is thanks to efforts from the team as a whole. We must not let go. We had an opportunity to have some marketing communication that were put forward in the last few months or at the beginning of the year that need a daily service, but seems to play an important role with the success we have. Most of these tools are virtual. And thank you to everyone. Thank you to the members of the team that has allowed us to be very efficient and very productive, even at distance with the technology that we have available to us. You see, our mission, even if we are developing the new strategic plan for 2021-2024, did not change. Potentially, we should remain the same in the new strategic plan that we are developing. Since this is the Small and Medium Business Week, I would like to thank all the business people who are taking risk and they don't count the hours and they work very hard to make our community grow. Without them, there would be no growth in a beautiful city. They want to grow and invest here. We're ready to be there to cooperate with them to make their project grow as fast as possible. Vision. On the left, you see the present visual that ends this year. And on right, the new vision that was developed for our strategic plan that is forthcoming. To develop a strategic plan during a pandemic required additional efforts considering the virtual, that was internal and external. I thank everybody who participated in this cooperation with the team and with my colleague who led this task with the consultant firm that is helping us out. I must admit that I was surprised, happily surprised with the quality of people and the quality of intervention that they made in the consultation for strategic plan for this year. The vision that is for a 5 to 10 years period seems to have evolved very well according to the strategic planning work that we did in the last 6 to 8 months. After compiling the results, the essential elements of our vision for 2015 are still included, but they progress just like our organization did in the last 6 years. You will notice in the terms that are repeating, such as prosperity, receiving of a new vision, to retain talents and investment, offer services, added values, innovating, and sustainable development. And this in cooperation with the strategy from the board of directors. For the first time for many years now, our members of the board have not changed this year. I don't know if it's the pandemic or the virtual AGM that did this, but the mayor, you see your name, the president, vice president, secretary, treasurer. Our team, no change in the team other than the position of communication marketing officer, been vacant since last month. We are feeling the impact. We will try to fill that position as soon as possible, but as there are other changes resource-wise for communication and marketing. We're talking with the city to fill these positions as responsible and efficient. Now, development zone, we're focused on the same geographic zone that is the industrial park with its phases, the technology park along the Boulevard Dieppe, and then downtown. So we put a lot of emphasis with the marketing tools. It's been fruitful. There's a lot of activities in the three zones that I mentioned. We will have to make available new properties as the new zone that we will attack will be the technology and the refined development and a piece of property that is not available, just like you. We're waiting the financing for the aviation park. As you see, you show all over the city, we're not letting go, and we are waiting for answers for this area. Our building permit for the year 2020, from January to September, we're in the $60 million range. It's going very well. Residential in blue is increasing, and the 2019 was a big year with the residential with 45 and non-residential 58. So with these projects for this year, there's a few projects that are happening in spaces, property that would develop an investment that happen either in property in downtown or technology zone or a few places like that. As for the funding of residential and non-residential, we maintain the ratio that we had with building permit that were half and half between residential and non-residential last year. And we approach our target for 60-40, but things are going well. Major accomplishment for this year, for 2020. So in the industrial park, we are talking about 4 properties with investors. So contrary to what you have for your version as to Park Affair Technology, we have a property that was sold and is in construction, but 3 are under the discussion. Downtown, we are acquiring one of the property of RHNB to complete Leogova, and we're reviewing the incentive financing, and we're talking with the people responsible for the city, and we're presently 3 properties under discussion compared to 2 when we prepared this presentation. So as such, things are going very well, even very well, considering the history of the organization. Over and above, as you know, we are finishing our strategic planning. We are putting forward an whole strategy marketing for 2017-2019. We didn't assign the necessary resources, but we redid the website, and we also banquet was held in virtual form. We went to reach about 10,000 people. That's a success as far as we're concerned. The CRID, a small baby, is evolving. Things are going well as far as they're concerned. As you know, they're in the second phase of improvement in productivity. It's a way for advanced manufacturing, and as it is going well with, they were approached by a co-op to have an expansion to add 10 more businesses to the wave that they presently have. Everything are in order. We congratulate them for their accomplishment. Innovation, it was supposed to be October 29th. The innovative transfer of knowledge, reaching people, artistic world with business people. We're looking if it will be rescheduled at a later date. If we leave the orange zone, we'll see. So we'll make a decision to that end. But nevertheless, I want to thank the confidence shown by our partners, the National Bank and Assumption Life. They're still there to support the event, as well as the sponsors from the government of New Brunswick and New Brunswick, and our sponsors from the private sector, the CBDC, and McIntyre Finn. And we thank them for their support. As for the present investment plan for this year, you have noticed that we are looking at building permit that have been issued. Not a big difference. The forecast were 60 million, and the reason is that presently in our radar, we don't see any commercial, non-residential of high importance that would be issued before the end of the world. Maybe there'll be surprises, but at this time we don't have any insight. As for the forecast for 2021, we are at 30 million, and we push off $12 million from 2021 to 2022, mainly because of the COVID, but they're good years that we have in front of us. And things should be very good for 2022. We have projects we are discussing with our clients. So cumulatively speaking, if these things happen, talk about additional revenue and real estate, according to the present rate, close $5 million. And as I say, certain projects have been withdrawn because they could not be completed within the delays. Investment wise, that we have the construction from January to September, according to the strength of residential, $5 million of non-residential, and 55 million of non-residential. There are a tax according to the rate that could generate $1 million, depending on what happens with the province, and the tax, property tax, if there are any changes. Investment opportunities in the city that could be had in years to come, next year. So as for the industrial park, we are renewing the permanent signs. We've been looking at a way to finance that for many years. This year, in discussion with the finance committee of the board directors, we tried to replace some of these signs, considering the savings that we did in our undertaking as to things that were not used, to invest $100,000 this year, possibly $150,000 next year, finally to renew the signs that have been there for several years, maybe 25 years. They're really outdated. In the business and technology park, as I said, the conception plan and maybe a tender, a call tender for a few $100,000 that could be done. All the property are being discussed. That sector, there's one single height property that is not being under discussion. And the construction of that, when 21, maybe not, maybe some work would start, and we want to look how we will finance this. And these are possibilities that are under discussion. We can look at how we can move forward. As for the downtown, it was a sum of $400,000 for property to be purchased. We put them aside for the development of downtown. and the acquiring another property on Goulburn. And we look at an interest and maybe a planning, parking to new option as to how to fill the parking needs. We put about $30,000. Possibly we could do it with that amount of money. So obviously it doesn't change the first priority. We're working on it. So the figures, maybe we come back with a subdivision. And one day would be fun to see that our industrial park would have a two-way access on industrial road, which is one way, but that's for future consideration. Finally, we come to the 2021 budget application, the application to the city, the same amount as it was last year, $1,115,000. There were some adjustments that were made in some expenditures according to the needs we had. So administrative wise, there's about $60,000 difference. The biggest increase is the possibility of having a debenture added if we see we have the financing for phase two, and then additional property tax for some lands that will have increased cost of living, salary, and benefits. In variable costs, you will notice a reduction of 37,500. Essentially, it's the banquet. We've cut the expenses by $30,000, and it will reduce our income to have a balanced banquet in a virtual format. That's what we see for the time being. If things change, we can go back to a budget as what we had for the banquet. But March is coming quickly. And then, as for the X priority, there is a difference of $70,000, the permanent sites for $100,000 that we see, and the work for additional $1,000 on what we had. As for the income, the revenues is to show them reverse to balance the budget. So the other expansion, the increase in revenue, we have a positive difference of about $113,000. And the biggest of this is the sale of property, an increase of $130,000 and more with interest. We have deposit, so we can get $5,000, but the loss of the banquet, $35,000. And there is $114,000. So this is a request 1.1 million for the city, the request. And I want to mention at the bottom line, we want to show what we're investing to do the job we're doing, and a property for the industrial park. The owners of the property this year will probably will pay in debenture, property tax, more than $500,000. So this is our presentation. It's the end of my presentation. And I'll answer your question if there's any. If I get answer them. Mr. Stever will answer them. Thank you for the presentation. Question? Started with Mr. Thibodeau. And then Mr. Thank you, Worship. My question is, when we talk about investment and forecast, you say because of COVID, you reduced $30 million for next year and $41 million in 2022. We've increased 2022 with the difference. We're reduced by $12 million in 2021 and that we push off for 2022. When we look this year, even if we had COVID from January to September, 59 million. Well, we measure the commercial project, non-residential, especially in the evaluation of our forecast. We have large projects, but we don't have all the projects. And if it's a single-family dwelling and duplex, or it's not included in our figures. Yes, there is a difference, but I can't talk about the project for where we don't have discussion with the customer. Thank you. Mr. Arsenault, let's go over here. Page 57, from January to September. Residential 54.7 million, and non-residential is 50.1. The 54.7, does that include the apartment blocks that we have built here and there, multi-residential? Yes. That's why the level is so high. Yes, it's a sector that is really going up at the present time. These are affordable building. It could be. It could be. Page 61 also. I notice the amount for the 4,900,000 and some dollars, you add the $1 million 3 times to come to that total. I don't have the same page number as you. Forecast and current expenses. Page 61. What's your question again? 2020, it says we have $1,018,439, and then the other figures of 2021, 2022 are there. But to have the 4,139,309 you have is because you've added the 1 million three times with the other two figures to come to that total. I think there was a mistake. The total should be. Sorry. I looked at it and that's what I was able to do. Maybe you've added that figure 3 times. Thank you for bringing it up. Page 63, please. Permanent signs. Should I believe that it would be to have new electronic signs that we can add or remove things as we see in the marsh. We've had the analysis. We look if we should add on our signs that option. And until now, because what we are doing, our bigger signs at the entrance of industrial park to indicate you are entering the industrial park of Dieppe. And well, here is the identity and the signs that will be permanent in nature. They'll be there for 5 years. If we don't have any problems, even more than 5 years. So the electronic part was analyzed. Some customers would be interested of having their address at the entrance of the park. Finally, it's not the industry that we're in. It's not the heart of our business. For the time being, we are not going in that direction. Because it's so attractive and it's so updated quickly. I thought maybe it would be an asset. We would have to give a contract to a business that does that kind of work. And when we started looking and assessing that, well, we quickly said, well, that's not the business we're in. Should we or not do it? For the time being, we don't privilege going in that direction. Thank you. Any more questions from the councillors? Mr. Godet? No, I just calculated the cumulative total. Yes, she was right. I understand. All right, it's fine. Thank you. A good member of the board of directors. He was there to defend us. There's no, thank you, Worship. I forgot when. The percentage for property tax. What do we give the province as municipality? According to what is calculated by memory, and I'm looking at Stefan, if I'm not mistaken, it's 48 something, 52 something. What? It's close to half and half, almost half and half. Thank you. Thank you. So for all the work we're doing, the province is receiving as much benefit as the city. That's why we depend on them to invest with us. Let the message be known. They receive more than their share of what they've invested. Fine. Any other question? No? So, thank you for your time, especially Mr. Stever. Mr. Stever is voluntary, he's not paid. We'll free you for the balance of the evening. Fine. That concludes. There's one presentation is true that we have to receive. Left, a proposed bylaw. Monsieur Simard, good evening.
Électronique ce soir.
Mike. Sorry. Mike.
Donc, merci, Monsieur le maire.
Your worship, ladies and gentlemen in the council, I want to present a project. You remember a few weeks ago, Councillor Alain, who is now our minister of local governance, asked us to have a bylaw concerning the donation bins. That's what I will present tonight. I'm asking you to give us reactions. We're there to prepare as good a bylaw as possible. To start with, I have a series of photographs to show you. We've asked our people responsible for bylaws to go around to see what it looks like. And there are some all over the place. We've collected about 20 all over the territory. And I want you to notice that we will continue with the photographs. And what we can see, they are isolated, they're in the middle of nowhere. I just want to show that to you at the end of a parking in a corner in the back. It's pretty well all over the territory. That's an example of where we can see the garbage. And that's the main problem we want to try and solve with this bylaw. There are more. This example that you see here, I don't know if you can see. There's something on one of the box. And where is the circle inside the box? You know, there's been debt because of that. Some people like Vancouver, they legislated in an important way. People will be suspended upside down, and the body being what it is, well, we die. we stop breathing. It happens here also. This is another image of garbage that are left in the boxes. This is the same area where you had a bicycle and the fourth box appeared. That's another problem, what you see here with the bylaw project. So you have the text with the package that you received today. The donation boxes are clothing boxes. Yes, right. So as you can see in the project that I gave you, I don't know if you have questions, corrections. I've had one. I talk about nonprofit organization, but it's without profit. The final version, if there is one, the basic principle that we put it in Article 1 is we need a permit for each boxes. Why? Each box will be set up in places where motorized everything, and it's much simpler if there was a permit per box. It's easier to manage. Article 2, I'm going quickly. I don't want to go through the whole bylaw tonight. I don't think we have to. And you probably look at it, Article 2, Section 2. Obviously, the organization that want to set up boxes at home are exempted from this. We won't ask them to have a permit. However, we have planned that only organizations that offer services can set up boxes in the app. Elsewhere, some options are being made to limit it only to organizations that have an office, maybe, or a business location in the app. Or do we go in the Greater Moncton, or do we go in Atlantic Canada? We simply said if you offer services, you are a nonprofit organization. We offer service to Quebecer, Dieppe people. You can set up. Article 3 is quite simple. We plan that a form must be filled, must be used. Article 4, Section 4 include the information that will be required. So the coordinate from the organization, from the representative of that organization, when we need to clean, move, or fix if a box is ill identified, we have to talk to someone. We have to do is call the organization and try to find what is the person. And when we find one, well, it's not always the proper person, or it's not easy. We'll ask the coordinate for the representative from the organization, the address where the table, that box will be set up, the number of boxes. We plan a maximum of 2 boxes per location. We don't want to have a series of boxes all over the place. I did not mention earlier, but here it's going relatively well. There's about 20 boxes all over the city, but there are places elsewhere where it started generating. There's war between these organizations. They steal boxes. There's all kinds of things that happen, and they accuse each other. So in some cities elsewhere decided to act, and it's based on what they applied, generally speaking. So I inspired myself on that to present this project. So we're talking a maximum of 2 boxes per location. Well, in the form, we'll ask a description of what is collected. We'll ask, do they collect it on a weekly basis, 2 weeks? How things are going, and the use that will be done with the items that are collected. What they intend. Article 5, quickly, some documents will be required to support the formula. We talk about resolution with a signature. We will, of course, the authorization of the owner of the property where the boxes will be installed. We'll ask a plan of the setup of the box, where it will be. We'll come back later on. And the liability insurance for $1 million. Why? Because I said earlier, some people die. The bad utilization of these boxes. It's not the ideal way of protecting them, but it's one of them for families and whatnot. So I go to Article 6, like $50 of license fee. 7, what you need an organization, as we said earlier, $50 fee per box. There won't be any withdrawal of the permit in the last year. And we ask that the boxes be built with plastic, metal, and built for outside use. We wouldn't want anybody, small business, to build a small box, small wooden box and set it up anywhere. I've talked to you implementation plan for the box, and this is what I want to indicate. It seemed important to me. I propose that the boxes must be installed only in commercial business, institutionalized or commercial, and to have appropriate piping for fire and everything else. That solution allows that the boxes, and sometimes, as we saw earlier in the
mal entretenu, et où il y a des choses, des déchets qui vont être
where
déposés.
some garbage will be put without being collected. So we want to avoid ill use if the boxes are supported by a building or business. We think that the owner will have the interest in that box and will want to keep it clean around it. So it's a strategy to settle the problem of garbage that are not collected or are collected only after a long period of time. As we're talking now, some boxes are set up on properties of the Crown land. So we talk to the province, and the province people deal with a contractor to go and pick them up in 2 weeks. That's the answer that we have sometimes. So we think that if we change the strategy, it would be more efficient as for the collection of the elements that are left. Another element that was mentioned by our planning team is that the boxes must not hinder the visibility or be set up on the length of the license is 1 year. Article 9 is non-transferable. The license, that is, the permit. It can be renewed free of charge. Article 10. How can we renew? Well, it's according to some information that you have listed on that section. So we ask that the quantity be mentioned, the items, the benefit that show the services that this represents for the Dieppe citizens, and for the renewal and new authorization of the owner of the property. So Article 13, and this seems to be important, the coordinate of the organization and the information on the license must be mentioned on the box. Someone who wanted to complain could call directly the organization, and that's not prohibited. Of course, 14 and 15, these articles allow the officers to intervene, to deal with complaints, charge. Article 16 It says that the property, the owner has the obligation to maintain and to collect any items that is put around the boxes for 24 hours. Some people will say it's a long delay, others will say it's short. I would say that it's the easiest one to manage, 24 hours. Finally, the fine pursuant to the, it's $300 for the first time, first infraction. That's the essential of the project of the bylaw that we work on dealing with donation boxes. If you have any recommendation, please let me know. Be happy. Maybe we can start by those that already have questions or comments. Mr. Gadet, thank you, Your Worship. First of all, I have 3 comments. The first is a question of $50. Non-profit organizations, Salvation Army, hospice, and whatnot. The idea of charging $50 for a box, I find that it's too much. The city could make their own contribution towards these organizations to say we don't have to charge $50 because it costs us $50. Well, number one. Number two, no question of public land. It's difficult to manage, and I have the impression that we will find ourselves in a situation where we're picking up bureaucracy to have permission to go here, to go there. I have the impression that maybe we should limit ourselves to private property where people or organizations or businesses are ready to let them set up these boxes. There are property, such as the marsh in Fox Creek. I don't know who owns that property. It must be the post office or us, but there are boxes there at the bottom of the hill on Fox Creek. It can be complicated. The 7F, they talk about boxes that should be set against a building. There are circumstances where I find that we're going too far. The boxes that we have at IG Co-op, they're in the corner, it bothers no one. And to force them to move these boxes and put them against IG or against the building, I find that it's going a little bit too far. I think that it's going too far, as I said. These are the 3 points that I have to comment on or to mention. Thank you. I don't think we'll want to have, if we start asking comments right now, it's better that we take all the complaints and the things that we believe are not correct, and during the next discussion, this is a first introduction of the issue, just to at least have initial feedback to allow Mr. Sima to continue his work while considering the comments that are made. And if there's a disagreement with certain comments, we'll have discussions when we present the bylaw or in another evening, such as tonight. Monsieur Leblanc, followed by Mr. Boutier. Thank you, Worship. Mr. Simard, do you feel at ease with the bylaw officers to police this? Do you find it heavy? No, it's feasible. It was discussed with them, with Mrs. Melanso, who is the coordinator for the bylaw, execution of bylaw, and she feels no problem. It's an additional load, but we have complaints that we're dealing with. Maybe we'll have less, so maybe it'll be easier. So one or the other is something we can do. Thank you. It's a heavy load at the beginning, but then it will be a relief. Mr. Boutier, follow Monsieur Vidal. You wish it. I like the idea to have better control these boxes. There are certain things. If we combine the two, we say we want to have 2 boxes per property. How will we coordinate? Because some properties are more popular. Will we allow the organization to choose which property? Because some places are more practical than others. So maybe that coordination that can be had maybe can represent challenges for this organization. And what I've noticed also, maybe we take the idea was the whole issue number 10, the renewal of the license. When we think about it, instead of asking a report, quantity of items collected becomes very heavy for the organization. And what will it give us, the city, to have that information? What does it give us? It's a suggestion, maybe in the form, per se. We want to see, are they servicing our citizens? That's what we want to know. They give us an evidence, a small box, and maybe the renewal of the license instead of asking all these report. That's all I have to say. Thank you. Monsieur Brideau. Your worship, thank you. I went faster than the light. Thank you.
Commentaire au sujet de lumière. Trop facile. Allez-y.
Too easy. Don't make comments with the light. Thank you, Mr. Sima. I repeat, when I went through the details that are included, I find it very good. But I started looking at your photograph. It says, oh, they're beautiful boxes. But I saw where there were garbage on the side. Each time that I go by these boxes, I always have I look at what is around, what surrounds them. On several occasions at the beginning, the intentions were good. Bags filled with clothing and they were flying in the wind. It's not the proper way to do a proper action. But I was saying, how often the association, the people who empty those boxes, how often do they pick them up? Because these boxes are full and people leave stuff around them. It's time to bring some more civility in these boxes. There's boxes where some places we saw it on the photograph at the end of Evangeline, where some garbage was spread all over. There was even a lady that was walking. She said, look at that, how ugly. Why is the city allowing that? Well, and in front of Santa Teresa's church, there's 2 boxes. And each time I went by, it's still there. There were carton boxes left there. I think the bylaw is well done, and it will give a better question of pride, keeping our city clean. So, thank you. That's it. Thank you.
Madame Arsenault.
Mr. Arsenault, your worship. First of all, I'm very proud that you're there, your group, to do that for our community. It's very important. But there's one thing that I'm wondering. Salvation Army, they have a property in Dieppe. They have their own store and they have boxes. It's on their own property. Would they have to pay? No, no. I started by saying that organizations that offer services are exempted on their own, so they wouldn't have to pay. Fantastic, thank you. Monsieur Godet, sorry, last comment. I believe there's an opportunity to meet some of these associations to ask them their opinion as to what we're proposing, because I don't think they were consulted. It would be a good thing. And secondly, I would like to add to the comment from Mr. Bouti on the question of report, because in this document, if I look at the way the boxes are emptied, a truck come in and throw everything in the truck. I can see the guy sitting down, take an inventory of what we are collecting in each box, how many bags, how many this, how many that. It's like asking people who collect garbage on Thursday morning to make a report of what they collected. It's not possible. So that's my comment. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Godet. Thank you, all the members of council. And on that, unless there's someone else, it will be the end of our meeting for tonight. Have a good evening.